you to get there speedily. All right. So, for our final speaker this evening, I have just a little bit of an introduction. There are things that you never think you're going to say as you're growing up and going through life. But many, many times over the past year, I have found myself saying, man, I really love the Satanists. More specifically, I love the Satanic Temple and the activism that this fantastic organization takes part in. They've taken part in several campaigns to ensure religious plurality and the rights of Satanists, secularists, and advocates for religious liberty, including a number of efforts that our speaker is going to tell you about, so I'm not going to bother talking about them now. Our speaker this evening is the co-founder and spokesperson for the Satanic Temple, and we are delighted to have him here and his unconventional activism this evening. Please welcome Lucien Greaves.
Thank you. Okay, we've had a lot going on just even within the past couple weeks, so I'll start getting into that. I challenged this asshole to a debate just yesterday or the day before, and after having done some debates, I do not fear an intellectual debate, but I know this would not be that. And I actually do fear the stupidity of some of my opponents. I once interviewed Ray Comfort. Yeah. And it's the stupidity that can trip you up, the non sequiturs and the rationales that just don't make any sense at all. And then you freeze, and then it gives the impression that because you don't have an answer, you've lost. And that's how it goes with Ray Comfort. And he started saying to me that if evolution were true, then was he supposed to believe that males and females both evolved by coincidence at the same time, within the same proximity, so that they could interbreed with one another? And then I'm stunned, and all I can say is, holy shit. And I feel like that would be similar with Jason Rapert, but I'm prepared now. But just yesterday, the Arkansas Times published an open letter I wrote to him, which will give you a background on what this is all about. I said, "Dear Senator Rapert, following an Oklahoma Supreme Court decision which ruled the Ten Commandments monument at the Capitol grounds to be in violation of their state constitution, we, the Satanic Temple, began considering alternative locales at which to offer our Baphomet monument." Is everybody aware of that? Yeah. Okay, right on. "As the entire point of our monument is that it pay homage to secular law and constitutional pluralism, our monument must be displayed, if displayed publicly, where another monument of religious significance exists. A single religious monument on public grounds conveys a message of government endorsement of a particular viewpoint. Multiple monuments of contrasting viewpoints, however, may stand as testament to our cherished First Amendment values. It so happens that Arkansas recently passed a bill in the Senate, signed into law by the governor, allowing for a privately donated Ten Commandments monument to be erected at the state capitol grounds in Little Rock. Lest anybody mistake this act as an effort toward asserting true religious freedom, Governor Asa Hutchinson made clear that non-Christian religious views need not apply, stating, 'We,' by which he apparently means himself, want it, the ability to place monuments on the Capitol grounds, to be exclusive. You, Senator Jason Rapert, were the lead sponsor of the Ten Commandments bill. You are openly dismissive of the very idea that other religious groups may enjoy the privileges you clearly intend to benefit the Christian perspective alone, and you've been particularly denigrating of the Satanic Temple. Speaking from ignorance, you openly disparage the Satanic Temple to the press and on your social media, mischaracterizing our beliefs and efforts. Learning that we, the Satanic Temple, are considering offering Baphomet to Little Rock, should a Ten Commandments proceed to be erected there, you have all but stated that our proposal wouldn't be worthy of consideration at all. In fact, you, Senator Rapert, having gone on record stating that minority rights aren't inalienable, but rather granted at the whim of we, the majority, you seem to display outright contempt for free expression and religious pluralism. Unconscionably, you seem to have absolutely no grasp on the concept of government viewpoint neutrality. As these are items of no minor import, and being that you don't shy away from inaccurately making mention of the Satanic Temple in pursuit of your theocratic efforts, I publicly offered to debate you in a neutral venue. Throughout this past week, as local Arkansas press reached out to interview me regarding the possibility of the Satanic Temple's monument being donated to Little Rock, I asked each journalist convey to you my willingness to debate, suggesting that their own media outlets might serve to act as intermediaries/moderators. I made clear that I'd be willing to travel to Arkansas at a moment's notice to see this debate through. Now, of course, you suddenly find that you would rather not give me the publicity you feel such a debate would offer. At least that's what you tell the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette. On your Facebook page, however, you grope for a convincing excuse for your failure to debate. The devil is a liar. Why would I want to debate anyone who worships a liar? You ask in a recent status update. I overshot. I don't even know. Yeah, that was a guy laughing at me after Megyn Kelly. There's his update. Setting aside the fact that the Satanic Temple is non-theistic, worshiping no god or gods, and eschewing supernaturalism, your question is still puzzling and unclear. Are you, Senator Jason Rapert, saying that you will not debate me because I am steeped in lies? Is this not, in fact, the best reason to debate somebody, to shine the light of truth upon lies and or misinformation? Should not a senator take the time to define for the people of Arkansas to what degree he believes that the government should act as arbiters of proper religious and or political expression? Can you, Senator Rapert, justify your apparent disregard of minority rights, free speech, and religious freedom for all within the boundaries of constitutional authority? Is it not a matter of general concern that a public official is openly suggesting viewpoint discrimination to the benefit of his or her own personal tribal affiliations? Many legal scholars agree. Once the state opens the door to one public display of religious significance, it's opened the door to them all. You may argue that the majority of Arkansas doesn't want a satanic monument on Capitol grounds. That being the case, should you not be made to explain why you clearly opened the door to our inclusion, and how exactly you intend to keep us out? You may argue for the Ten Commandments' historical legitimacy, but in fact we've chosen a monument design of equal or greater historical significance that I'd be happy to educate you upon. The idea that such a debate would give me undue publicity is also clearly ludicrous. Nearly every news outlet in Arkansas has already written of the Satanic Temple's possible monument bid. You, Senator Rapert, already openly argue against the legitimacy of our claims. If you are truly confident in the accuracy of your constitutional interpretation and the faultiness of my own position, you should gladly welcome the opportunity to correct me publicly, for I am not alone in my convictions. To willfully turn one's back on questions of such fundamental significance when put to the question is enormously irresponsible and contemptible. It's simply difficult to believe that you could truly be as spineless and craven as that. My offer to debate you, Senator, still stands, and I hope that the people of Arkansas see value enough in the questions presented to urge you to defend your views in a respectful, neutral, public forum. Love, Lucien Greaves, the Satanic Temple. So people have been harassing him on the internet, encouraging him to debate me. I think you should harass him too. But that was the story. Oklahoma was originally the location where we wanted to put up the Baphomet Monument. And the Oklahoman Supreme Court declared that it was illegal based on the state constitution of Oklahoma. And the governor of Oklahoma is fighting that. She says she's going to appeal, and she's mentioning the fact that Texas had a federal ruling that allowed for them to keep Ten Commandments in Austin, which is true, but it only bolsters our case because there was specific context for that, and there were multiple monuments involved. And Megyn Kelly on Fox News was also invoking that, and she was saying that the fact that the Supreme Court of Oklahoma asked for the Ten Commandments to come down was an assault upon religious liberty. And she wanted to talk to me, and I had all these things in mind, all these traps laid of which direction I could go to expose her hypocrisy. It didn't quite turn out exactly as I would have thought, but this is how the interview went.
Is tonight claiming victory after a court told the state of Oklahoma to remove a monument to the Ten Commandments from the state capitol. Before the ruling, the Satanists wanted to install their own tribute, a pagan idol showing a bearded goat, something like this, on the Capitol grounds, right next to the Ten Commandments. Joining us now, Randy Brogdon, who's a former Oklahoma State Senator who authored the bill to install the Ten Commandments monument. Also, Lucien Greaves, spokesman for the Satanic Temple. We will begin with Lucien. All right, Lucien. So is it like Lucien as in Lucifer? Is that why you're called that?
Sure, as you like.
As much as you like. I don't, like, is that your birth name?
No, it's not.
Okay. So what is it that first drew you to the Satanic Temple?
Well, I helped co-found the Satanic Temple.
Why?
Why? Because it is an embodiment of my deeply held beliefs, and I think there's a distinct need for a counterbalance against the dominant religious privilege in America today.
What are the deeply held beliefs that drew you to the Satanic Temple?
Well, we have 7 tenets. You can look them up online, but essentially we view Satan as a symbolic embodiment of the ultimate rebel against tyranny.
Okay, so now you're happy because you got the Ten Commandments taken down, but are you still pushing to have the goat with the horns and so on put up on the state capitol grounds?
No, we don't want our monument there without the Ten Commandments there. The point all along was that it would complement and contrast the Ten Commandments and reaffirm that we live in a pluralistic nation that respects diversity and religious liberty.
But the thing with the horns and so on, the Ten Commandments goes up because not only does it have some religious meaning, but it has historical meaning too. I mean, would you acknowledge that about the Ten Commandments?
Well, I would, well, yes, if you would acknowledge that. Baphomet has historical meaning as well.
The Baphomet is the goat with the,
the image at least goes back to the 19th century. It's at least as old as Mormonism in any case.
Okay, so let's say it does, but do you acknowledge that about the Ten Commandments? So there's nothing, you have no problem with the Ten Commandments standing there next to your devil figure, right?
That's correct. So long as multiple points of view are allowed, there's nothing wrong with a religious monument being up. But that really wasn't the argument that Oklahoma was making. They were saying that it wasn't a religious monument and that the Ten Commandments monument served a secular purpose, which is outright false.
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court found that. I mean, the U.S. Supreme Court has already ruled that the Ten Commandments, that the displays not only have a religious significance, but also a historical one.
Well, you're talking a different type of issue because in Oklahoma, they were ruling by the state constitution, not the federal constitution.
I know,
so it's
but
an entirely different issue. If you're talking Texas, it's a moot point.
It's not that different, but you're right.
No,
Texas,
it's entirely different. We're talking different constitutions.
I've looked at them both.
We're talking state constitution versus federal constitution.
I know.
So
I looked at them both. And then I
court.
practiced law for like a decade, too, so I did read them and see a lot of similar words. Lucien, thank you. Good luck to you.
And I taught you that there was a separation between that there was a difference between the federal constitution and the state constitution.
Thank you for that. All right, good to see you. Joining me now with more, former Oklahoma State Senator and Chair. Chairman of the Oklahoma.
But I found it puzzling. I started getting messages from Fox viewers later. That was one of my favorite. But Megyn Kelly was just another case because she had previously been talking about the situation in Oklahoma and saying it was an attack on religious liberty that the monument was being asked to be taken down. So I thought it was funny that she immediately approached me talking about the historical significance, and I was expecting her to bring up the religious assault argument again, and I could point out that Oklahoma was not making that argument at all. Oklahoma was saying, and this is the same thing they're doing in Arkansas, that the Ten Commandments are so fundamental to the codification of the U.S. Constitution that it deserves a place of primacy upon the premises of the Capitol. And, that's a lie. It's part of an entire mythology that's just clearly and provably untrue. You look, I mean, just put aside the fact that murder and theft aren't part of constitutional law anyway. That's part of criminal law. I mean, they always point out those two and say, well, what's wrong with the Ten Commandments? So it tells you not to murder and not to steal and all that kind of thing. But it also has prohibitions against free speech. Thou shalt not take the Lord God's name in vain. It has definite prohibitions on free exercise of religion. Thou shalt have no God before me. These are obviously theocratic fiats. So I feel like she knew she was going into untenable territory, so she started with a historical argument, which isn't much better than outright saying that it's a religious monument. But my whole point, if I had known she was going to cut me off so much sooner, I would have argued the case a bit different. I knew she really had a thing for Texas, as affirming that you can put up the Ten Commandments. And had I known my interview would be so brief, I would have argued that the Texas ruling really affirms that the Baphomet can be there as well if you're going to have the Ten Commandments there, because it has the Hammurabi and other Confucian edicts or whatever else. But it just didn't go that route at all. So I feel like it was actually the best she could do to cut it off. And I think that's part of the power that we have in the Satanic Temple, is that we're using a lot of the arguments that the Christian right is so used to using exclusively on their own when they're talking about religious liberty, and when we're talking about not allowing the government to be arbiters of what's proper political or religious expression. It's really fun to try to pin down somebody on Fox News to try to argue against you on something like that. And I feel she kind of felt she was getting into negative territory as that went along. But we're having an unveiling event for the monument on the 25th in Detroit. You're all invited. The local Christian community, some gang of thuggish pastors is now running amok and yelling about it, and they're mischaracterizing us in the press and shouting and ranting and raving. There's a great clip from last night where our chapter head from Detroit is arguing with one of these fellows. That should be up online. Check our media for that. Here was the monument being completed in Florida. It's being shipped up now to Detroit. And there it is. It hasn't been seen its entire completion yet, but that was it from the sculpture. So I'm kind of hoping that the governor really does hold her ground in Oklahoma, because I was looking forward to the lawsuit over there, because they mishandled our case so poorly from the beginning that I can't help but feel a lawsuit against Oklahoma will reveal an entire culture of corruption and incompetence within their state government. We applied through their Capital Preservation Commission to have our monument put up alongside the Ten Commandments, and they've ignored us. And they were saying to the press that there was a moratorium on monuments until they resolved this case with the ACLU, which is certainly, it's even less resolved now that the governor is trying to appeal the Supreme Court ruling. But they never replied to us, so it's a de facto rejection. We'd have the grounds to sue, viewpoint discrimination. But we filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the Capital Preservation Commission at some point for any documents related to communication about our monument request. And what they sent us, I am convinced, was incomplete. That there had to have been some kind of government correspondence on this. And they didn't send us any of that. They sent us public response almost exclusively. And during the moratorium, they approved 2 other monuments. And the governor's office did not reply at all to a Freedom of Information Act request. So I think there's definitely a few problematic things with that. At some point, there was some wild Christian off his medications ran his car into this Ten Commandments monument, and he got out, took a piss on it, was ranting and raving about killing Obama. And later he wrote a letter and he said that the real reason was because there were cars full of infected meat of the dead body of Michael Jackson driving by, and he was protesting against that or something like that. The letter is a real classic of schizophrenic paranoia. But what's funny is later on the Sean Hannity show, after I was on Megyn Kelly, there were a couple Oklahoman politicians blaming the Satanists for driving into the Ten Commandments. They're flat out lying. Anyways, here's some of the Here's some press clips from the monument controversy.
Don't put Satan on the front steps of our Capitol.
Here it is, the devil in the image of a goat, the image that has Oklahoma voters getting vocal.
It's kind of freaky. I think it's a little bit funny.
Comical to some that the Satanic Temple wants their monument to go right next to the Ten Commandments statue. The Satanist group says the placement will show Oklahoma accepts all religions.
But let's be absolutely emphatic. This is ridiculous. It's not just that it's a mockery. It actually demeans America.
It has to be equal representation of every belief. You know, as long as they don't infringe on mine, I don't want to infringe on theirs.
Satanic sculpture is almost complete, and it could be going outside the Oklahoma State House. Satanists raised money for the sculpture after a monument of the Ten Commandments went up.
I think this might be just plain evil.
It's a statue of the devil, and you think it might be just plain evil? That's like saying you think the tall guy sitting in the chair in the memorial might be just plain Lincoln.
I think Oklahoma is becoming more of a progressive state. I think it could definitely happen.
This is kind of what America was based on, freedom of religion, and for us to say, whether you believe in it or not, that it shouldn't be there is kind of wrong.
But many say the statue goes against core Oklahoman beliefs.
Of having little kids around it, that's just ridiculous. I mean, I don't understand where they come from.
He doesn't understand where kids come from.
It's based on the Ten Commandments. Whether you like it or not, it's our judicial system.
Making a moral equivalence between, say, Christianity, which promotes things good for the most part, and all other religions, and Satanism, which promotes evil.
Not a good role model.
So they should be able to put the statue up, and then they should be shot right next to it, and then we take it down.
You kidding me now? Are we making a mockery of everything with regard to Christianity in this society? Now we're going to have a satanic monument next to the Ten Commandments? Really?
A satanic group has designs for a 7-foot statue of Satan that they want placed on the steps of the Oklahoma Capitol. It's not going over so well in the Sooner State, sometimes called the buckle of the Bible Belt. But the spokesperson for the Satanic Temple argues that the Ten Commandments placed on the Capitol steps in 2012 opened the door for their statue. State Rep Paul Wesselhoff argues that the Ten Commandments monument is different because of its historical significance.
We don't believe that people should be stealing from people, and so we enforce those kinds of laws, and that's what we do as lawmakers.
But as a representative in Oklahoma, you represent Oklahoman Hindus, Jews, Buddhists, Muslims, as well as Christians, and even Satanists, insofar as you should maintain an environment in which each of these groups are treated with equal respect in the eyes of the law. If you don't understand that basic premise of holding public office, you have no business doing so.
Well, that's your opinion. I have my own.
Absolutely, not mockery, not ridiculous.
He missed his reply. He said that was my opinion.
Religious freedom means the government doesn't take sides, one religion or another. You may not like the Satanists. Guess what? That doesn't matter.
The Satanists came along and said, hey, well, if you get your Ten Commandments statue or monument, we get our Satanist monument.
To me, Satan is not a religion. They may say, yes, it is, but that's not what this nation was built on.
By the word religion in the First Amendment, the founders meant Christianity.
Almost like they went to the craziest group they could find. No offense.
Anyways, I want to tell you a little bit about our lawsuits against the abortion restrictions in
Don't put Satan on the front.
In Missouri. We actually we wrote up some exemption forms based on our religious beliefs, and the two key tenets of our 7 tenets are one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone, and belief should conform to the best scientific understanding of the world. We should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit our beliefs. And on those grounds, we first drew up exemptions for kids against corporal punishment, saying that, kids should not be, if a kid doesn't want to be beaten in school and the kid's sincerely held beliefs are in line with ours, they're exempted from taking savage beatings in school that the administration gets a pass on, which would be a felony if their parents were to do such damage to them. 19 states still allow it. Anyways, I knew it would be difficult to get a kid to actually stand up to that. They have to sign it. We need somebody to establish standing. And about a year ago, we put up an exemption form against informed consent materials in certain states where they mandate political propaganda to be given to women before they get an abortion. And it's really religious propaganda. And in the case of Missouri, where we're finally testing this case, they actually say that life begins at conception, and it gives false information, inaccurate, non-scientific information regarding correlations between breast cancer and abortion, suicide and abortion, and generally tries to make women feel very guilty and hassled by the whole thing. And in Missouri also, they have a 72-hour waiting period. A woman has to go into Planned Parenthood, and there's only one clinic in the whole state, so it could be many, it could be a good distance away, so it would necessitate taking time off of work, traveling, getting accommodations, that kind of thing. And then come back 72 hours later for the procedure, because they're supposed to use that time to digest the informed consent materials that we say are a moot point anyway. And finally, this was put to the test in Missouri, where a woman went into Planned Parenthood, and part of the letter says, "I regard political information as a state-sanctioned attempt to discourage abortion. Communication of political information, to me, imposes an unwanted and substantial burden on my religious beliefs." They turned her down, of course. So we filed the lawsuit immediately, and it was the first lawsuit we filed was a state lawsuit leveraging the RFRA laws in the state, which we feel Hobby Lobby set a great precedent for us. We're quite happy about it. They, for one thing, a lot of people ask us how we're going to stand up to the sincerity test, and happily, that's not a question. And in the case of Hobby Lobby, they never asked, how often they go to church, how deeply do they believe. We're open that the satanic construct is metaphorical to us, but that shouldn't even be called into question at all. Do you really have to believe in a talking snake and a man in the sky and a